guys, how are you? I have a video for this week, and this week we have a very, very little book. I know, I was actually planning on bringing you something bigger, but you know how everyone said that our reading has been curtailed by the writing? Yeah, had that same problem. But I did find something to bring for you, and actually it's better that I bring this first off to introduce it, because Her Infernal Majesty is no good at introducing, and she's going to do two more of this particular writer. So before we start, remember there is our shop where we have books and writing services. There's also our Redbubble shop where we have over 100 designs. If you want to support us, that's where you can support us. If you want to support us without spending any money, that's cool. Totally dig that. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. All right. So that's all that sort of thing out of the way. What is the book we're doing? The book we are looking for at this week is The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. So it's barely even a book. Like, it's an afternoon sit down read. It was originally published in a literary journal, so it was not what was it? It was first published in the London Review of Books in 2006. So it's not a long read at all. Very little book. But it's about the Queen discovering the joy of reading. Okay, so here is where we need a little bit of who is Alan Bennett, because honestly, you're looking at that and you're thinking, seriously, Janice, this is not like what you normally do. Why are you bringing us something that sounds so conservative? Okay, so this is why I need to introduce who Alan Bennett is. Alan Bennett is a major playwright, which is why Her Infernal Majesty is going to do a couple of those plays. We've already got them. She's going to do them this year. But as Alan Bennett is not dead, Her Infernal Majesty is going to have to probably ask whoever she has around, which probably means she'll ask Peter Cook, which probably means she will end up with a weird version of Alan Bennett, you know, kind of like when she asks Jonathan Swift things. It doesn't end well, asking a satirist about things like that. So I'm going to introduce you to Alan Bennett. God knows what she's going to say. But Alan Bennett is one of the 4 members of Beyond the Fringe. He is the only surviving member of Beyond the Fringe, with the death a few years ago of Jonathan Miller. So Beyond the Fringe are Jonathan Miller, Peter Cook, Alan Bennett, and Dudley Moore. And Alan Bennett is one of the Oxford contingent, with Dudley Moore, and Peter Cook and Jonathan Miller were the Cambridge contingent. So, like Dudley Moore, Alan Bennett has working class background. He comes from Leeds, so he's not just working class, he's up north. Sorry about that. We don't really understand how a country the size of a postage stamp can have such antagonism between people who live 50 kilometers away, but apparently they can. Apparently this is a thing. Honestly, it's like beefing with people from Wollongong. Why? Or Newcastle. Why? Like, they're not even as far away as Armidale or Brisbane, a whole other state. No. This is regional things. So have no concept of this. But apparently in England, coming from up north, and Leeds is up north enough for that to be a problem. A disadvantage. So Alan Bennett comes from twice disadvantaged in that regard. He's northern and he's working class. So he gained an Oxford education after he had done his national service. He's one of the elder of the Behind the Fringe, which the fact that he's still kicking is impressive. Alan Bennett is also a queer writer, which sometimes comes out in his work, but he's not an overtly queer writer, just as he is not an overtly working class writer. But he is a comic writer, but his comedy is very, very gentle. So he's not like, it's very, very gentle, but it definitely has a point. So he's not like Peter Cook, who has this deeply surreal and very barbed humour, and you know when you've been got. He's not even like Jonathan Miller, who can be a lot more aggressively pushing at things. Alan Bennett is extraordinarily polite and will then come out with something unbelievably shocking to get a laugh. And you don't quite realise it until it's like, oh, I thought this was a book I could give to my granny. You can give this to your granny. Like, my granny's in her 90s. It would not shock her to read this. But at the same time, it's not just a piece of writing that would appeal to elderly relatives. So he is an interesting writer. He's somebody who manages to slip right under the radar, look all meek and mild and like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, and yet he will make points and challenge the reader in ways that, because their guard is down, get through. His monologue in Beyond the Fringe is a go at, sermons. It's this big, long, rambling sermon that goes nowhere and seems vaguely inappropriate what this person is saying. And the bit that I always laugh at whenever I listen to it is when he says that he and a friend have climbed a mountain, they're looking at the sunrise, and then my friend bent over and suddenly and violently vomited. And then he just keeps going. It's like, where did that come from? That is Alan Bennett's humour. It does work in context, and it is funny. You just don't. It's just sort of a disadvantage if he comes on straight after Peter Cook. Then his humour is at a disadvantage. You sort of have to watch it in isolation after the sitting on the bench sketch, because he said he rather resented that with Peter Cook, because he'd leave him with an audience that was weak from laughing, and then he's got to try and get some laughs out of them himself, and he's not that kind of a comedian. But the Uncommon Reader is about the Queen. The Queen, while walking her corgis in the grounds, discovers a local mobile library that is being visited by one of the kitchen staff at Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle. I think it's Buckingham Palace. I don't know. They have so many palaces. How many houses with 57 bedrooms do you need? Anyway, and she goes in because the corgis are making a noise and harassing the poor bloke sitting there doing his job, and she decides that she has to borrow a book just out of politeness. So she borrows a book. And she has not been in the habit of reading novels. And what she discovers is novels lead to novels. And pretty soon, the Queen is, in all of her free time, whenever she possibly can, reading novels. And this causes novels and biographies. She's met a lot of people, and she is now, as she reads a lot of the writing of people that she's met, she's rather, well, it's a shame I had never actually read any of their work. She's being led on this writing journey, at least initially, by the kitchen hand who was using the traveling library. But it quickly expands out from the traveling library, which has its funding cut and no longer comes round, and then they have to go and, you know, get books from other places. The palace staff don't like this, especially not her private secretary. Sir Kevin from New Zealand, he is really not happy about this because Her Majesty is no longer really focusing on the job at hand, and Her Majesty is ceasing to be a blank slate, which is a real problem, because now Her Majesty, from decades of being whatever people need her to be, of being this reassuring presence and allowing people to feel that they've been noticed while speaking pleasantries and nothingness, is suddenly asking people, handing her flowers and whatnot in the crowds. She's asking them what book they're reading, and they are getting very freaked out by this. Some are getting into it. Some are starting to give her books, but it is starting to cause issues. She is neglecting her official paperwork, not going so far into it. She is asking the Prime Minister about his reading. She is getting involved in reading. But it's also changing her. She is starting to become empathetic, sentimentality, sensibility is starting to come into her life. After decades of being groomed and kept in a position where obviously you have the interests like writing or, you know, whatever else, but they're communal interests. Then she discovers reading, which is a solo interest. Because novels are a solo thing to engage with. Readers do like to meet other readers. They like to talk about the novels that they're reading. But at the same time, it is essentially an isolating experience. You can't read communally. It's not like the theatre or the opera. It's not like going to see a sporting event. It's not that sort of communal thing. It's not a case of that the audience is with Her Majesty. Her Majesty is now absent, and her reading is eclectic. She is not just reading what is the big seller. She's reading all over the place. All sorts of English novels. And it is making her human, individual. And that's not what anyone in the palace wants. So I'm not going to spoil the ending because it's a really tiny book. You can totally read this on your own. But I think that Alan Bennett is really pointing at the importance of reading. Alan Bennett, I've watched several interviews with him, and one of the things that he is very, very pointed about is the need for public education, for education to be state-run education, not private education, not siloed and ghettoed of here are the privileged people who get the fancy education and here is whatever for everybody else. Now, that's especially a much bigger problem in England, but in my country, that's a big problem. It is a big problem. The expansion of private schools and the therefore hierarchical nature of education, and the notion that one level of education is somehow better than another sort of education. And the government funding that flows from that and the perceptions that flow from that. These things actually are important. And for Alan Bennett, reading is part of that. Because reading expands who you are. Because reading expands your perspective, which is what is happening to the Queen. But it's also what happened as literacy exploded. And literacy exploded a very long time ago. Literacy really exploded when Her Ladyship has talked about this during the 18th century. Reading for pleasure, reading as a solo act, has always been seen as vaguely suspicious by people who want to be able to control. This is why women were, novels have frequently been seen as a women's thing, partly because women were isolated in homes, and that is how that they could, especially middle class women, that is how they could access ideas. You don't know what's in a book till you read it. And you don't know how that book will change you until you read it and you are changed. This is radically dangerous. And so as a result, the palace is not happy. But this happens societally. And along with reading came the expansion of empathy. Empathy has always existed, but reading allows for a much broader level of empathy within a population. That is what makes reading dangerous and subversive. It's why education is important, because education is what allows you to read. So you see, this looks like really conservative, but Alan Bennett has basically put a little tiny thing in this saying it is a celebration of the power of reading and a celebration of what it does to a person to make them ungovernable, make them uncontrollable. And it uses the most powerful person in the state, the Queen herself, who has been kept governable, controllable, and able to fulfill what is essentially a ceremonial role, and a role that doesn't require an individual, but basically a body in that position to formalize things, which is why it works as a hereditary thing. It doesn't matter which body's in the seat, so long as there is a bottom in the seat and a head with a crown on. We don't want them to be individuals. In fact, individuality and monarchy don't go well together. Some of the biggest failed monarchs are ones who were too individual. Although the Stuart ones, you can see that in. And this is what starts to happen. Once people become ungovernable, once you can't control what they are bringing in, once you can't control those ideas, once you make them, and this is the other thing that Her Majesty discovers, is that you grow as a reader. that you grow and you grow and you grow. That what was boring when you started reading is now engaging. Sometimes what was engaging when you started reading is now boring because you've grown past it. So Alan Bennett is basically talking about reading and the importance of reading. And by using the monarch, he's really saying, look, this is important for everyone. But he is a man from a working class background. And if you deny people education, if you deny people if you gatekeep things like reading, because one of the things that happens is council cut back cutting back the mobile library is a deliberate attempt to restrict that from people. If you're not bringing the books to people, if you're not bringing a framework to help people understand something, then how are they going to access it? You don't have to burn books to make them hard to find. You cut resources. You cut education. You tell people that this isn't important. He has a little bit of a dig at Harry Potter because a lot of people in the crowd, when she asks what your favourite book is, a lot of them say Harry Potter, and she just moves on. She has no interest in that. Which I think might be Alan Bennett in a way saying, this is another way of siloing people, is give them dreck. Give them dreck, and then they are not going to have the capacity to move out of it. Because it's not just like, that's the other way you can limit people, is cul-de-sac them. Stuff them into a cul-de-sac of certain ways of reading. And you certainly see that with a lot of Harry Potter things, a lot of very highly genred books do form cul-de-sacs, and people don't read outside of them, and they also don't lead outside of themselves, because that's the thing that makes the reading start to become contagious, is you read one writer and then you want to read another and another and another, and they suggest each other. Books suggest each other. Books talk to each other. You can prevent reading by cul-de-sacking readers in stuff that doesn't talk to it, anything else. It's like a hall, being in a hall of mirrors. All you get is disjointed versions of itself. But when you read widely, when you read with depth, when you read in a way that starts to demand more, books build on books, and you start thinking, oh, I've never read anything from Thomas Mann, or I've never read any of the South Americans, or I've never read any of X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter where you go, so long as you go somewhere. So who would have thought reading could cause such chaos? Well, Alan Bennett thought reading could cause such chaos. It is a very nice little book, very quick read. As I said, this is the sort of thing you can give to relatives and not worry, oh no, it's going to be too much. No, it isn't going to be something that they're going to go about. So, looking for something for someone older for a birthday present or something, it's a really good one for that. But at the same time, it's not empty. As part of the brilliance of Alan Bennett is he looks incredibly establishment. He looks meek and mild and like butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. And he'll upend a lot of what you might have thought that you were getting when you go into it. So that's all of it for me this week. I think this is a little bit of a shorter one, but it's a very short book with quite a singular focus. So there's that. I do hope to have something more substantial for next time, but yeah, we're still in the middle of writing, and that seems to be having an issue on what I read, what any of us read. But Her Infernal Majesty can still watch plays, and Caesar can still watch films, and Hatter can still give writing updates. So we might be getting a few more plays and films this year than last year. All depends on how things go. Anyway, I'll see you again next time with another book. I know her ladyship said she probably wasn't going to come around, but I think some of her stuff is shorter, so she might be around. I know she gobbled up a whole load of weeks, but I think we've forgiven her. So her ladyship will be back at some point. Anyway, that's all from me. Peace and love, guys. Peace and love. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.